For staying with us. Four nations, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia and Portugal, formally recognized a Palestinian state yesterday. The move comes one day before world leaders convene for the official start of the UN General Assembly 80th annual meeting. As it stands, more than three-quarters of the UN's 193 members already recognize the Palestinian state. We'll have more in this report.
Momentum is building at the United Nations as the UK, Canada, Australia and Portugal formally announced recognition of Palestine as a state. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called it a revival of hope for peace and a two-state solution.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. Ordinary people, Israeli and Palestinian, deserve to live in peace, to try to rebuild their lives free from violence and suffering.
The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, said the move is not ruling out a formal meeting with President Donald Trump this week at the UN General Assembly.
We have had in Australia a long-term position on a bipartisan basis of two states. One of those states is, of course, Israel. The other, of course, is Palestine. Our active recognition is based on the commitments received from the Palestinian Authority, including that the terrorists of Hamas cannot govern Gaza again.
More countries, including France and Belgium, are expected to follow suit during a high-level conference co-hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in New York. On Sunday, President Macron discussed political efforts that should be made to stop Hamas.
I recognize the legitimacy of so many Palestinian people who want a state, who are a people, they want a nation, they want a state, and we should not push them toward Hamas. If we don't offer them a political perspective and such a recognition, the unique answer will be security, and they will be completely trapped by Hamas as the unique option.
But the move has drawn sharp criticism from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who insists a Palestinian state will not happen.
According to international law, a recognition of an entity as a state has to have before that a finite borders. There are no finite borders there. There should be a specific territory. There should be one authority in that territory. None of this exists. So there was a reason why there was no recognition until now. So to do it as a matter of punishment of Israel, to recognize another thing, this is on a wrong basis, and it will not last.
As diplomatic efforts intensify, questions remain over the real impact on the ground, especially in Gaza, where many have been killed and over 1 million displaced.
And Global Affairs analyst Collins Wake joins me to discuss the recognition, the most recent one, of the Palestinian statehood 108 years after the Balfour Declaration. Good to have you join us at this time. We've seen some arguing that this symbolic recognition without a framework for negotiations changes little on the ground. Do you think this move meaningfully advances the possibility of two states living side by side?
Well, Olamide, first and foremost, I want to underline one of the phrases you used, which is the latest recognition. Now, the reason I'm singling that out is the fact that the number of states recognizing Palestine is actually growing, and that is significant. It is significant because what it tells us, Olamide, is that tonight we have what could be regarded as a landmark in international diplomacy. I mean, it is not just, another country. We are talking of the UK that has formally recognized the state of Palestine ahead of a United Nations General Assembly. What makes this different, Olamide, is the fact that, this recognition comes after decades of conflict and stalled negotiations. But also, the UK is explicitly doing this as part of a push to revive that two-state, solution. I mean, we heard, the Prime Minister talk so eloquently about it, and his basis is as follows. There has to be a safe and secured Israel, and there has to be also a self-determined Palestine. At this moment, we do not have any of those two. So why do we have to keep dancing in circles? And so, this is really significant. And I must say that this move is likely to, reverberate in many capitals, especially in Africa, including Nigeria, because it touches on deeply held principles of national sovereignty, human rights, self-determination, and justice. And this is part of what, most African countries have been suffering, including climate justice, which I hope is part of, the agenda for the UN General Assembly. So yes, this is major.
And Israel has reacted saying that this is in a way rewarding terrorism. Given that more than 3/4 of the UN member states already back the Palestinian statehood, to what extent would this recognition really have on Israel now that they've responded?
Well, they have responded, and of course, their response wouldn't, surprise anyone. You can actually consider it a generic, response. The fact is this, Olamide. Israel and its staunch ally, the United States, are day by day, seeing the door close very, very tightly around them. And I mean, at some point, they've got to start seeking, a soft landing. And I believe that this point is now. When, let's not forget this, Olamide, because this recognition by the UK is coming just within hours, not even days, of the United States under Donald Trump paying a state visit to the UK. So it means that this must have been, discussed, and so he saw this coming. And so many more allies, great ones, powerful ones, are going to follow suit. And so at some point, there will be no other option than, this two-state solution.
And we don't really know if the United States really was on the same page with UK on this. Historically, the US has, strongly backed Israel. How do you think the US may respond to this latest one, especially with close allies like the UK, Canada, breaking rank on this issue?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. We do know that, this is not something that the US will just swallow, line, hook, and sinker. Definitely not. So again, resisting this is generic where we should expect it. But the recognition sets, a precedent. If a Western power like the UK is willing to take this step, it may create space for others to follow, not only in global South, but actually more broadly. However, you alluded to this. This is not yet Uhuru, because recognition is not a magic wand. On the ground impact depends on follow through. There has to be diplomacy, there has to be aid, pressure, negotiation, and indeed security guarantees. So we are far from the destination, but a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and those right steps have been taken now.
At least they've made a move on this. Wait out to see what this really means, this recognition really means for Palestinians. Global Affairs analyst Colin Siweki, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.